But yeah, remember bawling my eyes out on the bus, and one of the boys thought what's wrong, Benny? Is your dog died or something? I go, no, like, fuck. I lost a once in a lifetime opportunity. So shattered and humiliated.
Welcome to another episode of Execs Who Run, the podcast on life, leadership, and the miles in between. I'm your host, Jason Hunt, and today's guest knows all about impact, both on and off the field. Ben Alexander is a former Wallabies prop, a record-holding Brumbie, and one of the most respected figures in Australian rugby. But his story doesn't end at the final whistle. In this raw and revealing conversation, Ben opens up about what came next, the identity crisis, the mental health struggles, and the quiet unravelling that followed life at the top. And then, the moment it all began to change. A simple invitation to Parkrun. That run became a lifeline, and eventually a movement. Today, Ben is the co-founder of Running for Resilience, a grassroots initiative helping thousands of Australians face life's hardest moments through community, connection, and of course, running. This episode is honest, it's human, and it's deeply hopeful. A quick note before we begin. This episode contains open discussions of mental health struggles, including references to suicide. If you or someone you know needs support, please seek help through your local mental health service or lifeline organisation. You are not alone. Let's dive in. Welcome along to the show, Ben. How are we doing today?
They're doing good. Thanks for having me, Jason.
Yes, that is good. First thing we jump into, bit of a warm-up. I want to know about the last run that you've done.
It was on Monday. We had public holiday here in Canberra, which is great. One of the extra ones, Reconciliation Day. So I had a day off. We had a big weekend at the farm when camping with the kids, and then had taken them to soccer training, and I hadn't really done any exercise over the weekend. So I went for a run up along Execs Ridge, which is just a really nice it's a bit of a pine forest on the edge of Canberra. And yeah, went up running along the ridge for about 50 minutes while the kids were at soccer.
Kids playing soccer, is the ex-rugby player okay with that?
Yeah, more than okay. My wife played soccer when she was a kid. So she loved it, but the girls all really got swept up in that Matildas fever a couple of years ago, and we went out and saw the Matildas on Monday night. They played Argentina. So now the girls, they wanted to play, and yeah, I played tons of different sports as a kid, ended up just settling on, basketball and rugby, and then rugby after finishing school. But yeah, whatever they play and they enjoy, I'm good with.
And yeah, I think most young girls got caught up in Matilda's fever, it's pretty cool to see, right? I was actually listening to another podcast today about, just the impact of different things on women's sport and whatnot. And it's those kind of storylines that you really need to be able to create something like that and get involved and help grow the sport regardless of where it is or what it is, right?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And so I've got a sports bar, and after the penalty shootout, I think that was the round of 16. So the quarterfinal and the semi-final were the fastest the pub's ever booked out. We booked out within 3 or 4 minutes once the game was over. Everyone rushed over, phones, emails, people trying to make bookings. It was crazy. We had to try and set up extra screens and extra projectors. And yeah, it was awesome. I mean, yeah, the girls... Yeah, that Sam Kerr goal in the semi was pretty special, even though the game didn't end as we'd like. It was awesome. Awesome bit of Aussie sporting history, that World Cup.
Yeah, for sure. And you yourself have been a fair part of Aussie sporting history, which we're going to dive into. I think a lot of people will be listening to this to hear a little bit about your career, or your early rugby career, which is just the start of your career, because there's other cool things that we will talk about that you've done since. But I want to dive right in, and I want to kind of go early days. You were playing for the Brumbies, you'd played just a handful of games for them, and you get selected for the Wallabies. I think you played, was it like 6 games or something for the Brumbies? Yeah, before you got selected for the Wallabies. That's a pretty uncommon story. We see every now and then that happening, but tell me what was going through your brain when you got that call that you'd been selected for the Wallabies.
Yeah, I was at my mate's house. So the season finished, and I'd had the Brumbies season finished, and had a few games off the bench, and played well at a couple of them. The start of that year, my only goal was just to get one game off the bench for the Brumbies. And I'd sort of played 5 or 6 and actually had a few good ones. And I was like, yep, finished the Brumbies season, went and celebrated, went pretty hard on Mad Monday, thinking, yep, this season, big tick. And then hadn't even thought about the next season, but I was just still celebrating what had been an amazing season personally. Brums hadn't played well, but yeah, personally, great season, and had a big weekend. And I was at my mate's house. We're all lying around feeling a bit sorry for ourselves. And yeah, I got a phone call, answered it, and it was the Wallaby team manager going, "G'day, Ben, you've been selected for the Wallabies." And I just, I was dumbstruck. I was like, "What?" Yeah, probably went into shock. And I sort of stumbled back in. He said, "Yeah, you got to fly to Sydney tomorrow for press announcement, blah, blah, blah." And so hang up, go back into the lounge where all my mates were, and they were all like, "What? What? Who was that?" And I go, "I've been picked for the Wallabies." And they just go, "Oh, fuck, we thought someone had died." And I was like, no. And then I've got to fly to Sydney tomorrow morning. And so, yeah, I remember I was staying with my grandparents at the time. So I went back to their house. Well, they were going to give me a lift to the airport in the morning. And I remember just not being able to sleep, just so like, oh my goodness, what's this? 12 months earlier, I didn't even have a contract with the Brumbies. I'd had one a few years earlier, gotten injured, gone to Europe to play in England and come back, and didn't really know if rugby would work out. So yeah, I was as surprised as anyone. And then did the media press release with Robbie Deans. It was his first squad as coach. First time we had a Kiwi come across, coach the Wallabies, and yeah, did the press release, and then went back to my hotel room, and my phone, I think it had like 300 texts and 100 odd missed calls or something. The most I've ever had, which is really cool. And looking back, I got pretty lucky around the timing. So whenever a new coach comes in, so the World Cup had been the year before, Australia lost the quarterfinal to England. And so Robbie had come in and he wanted to give some young guys that he thought had some potential, pick them early ahead of when they were ready, to give them time to get ready for the 2011 World Cup sort of 4 years later. So I was just really lucky that in those handful of appearances, I'd caught Robbie's eye. He was still coaching the Crusaders that year. But yeah, it just was, mate, I was as shocked as anyone. I think my nickname at the end of that season, Lottie Takiri, one of the wingers, I think most people know, rugby league legend, Wallaby legend, he called me Statue because I just sort of stood there, didn't say anything that whole year. I was still getting to know like my Brumbies teammates who were in the Wallabies, some George Smith and Sterling Mortlock. I could sort of have a word or two with them because I started to get to know them. But the guys from the other states that I'd looked up to, especially Lottie, I just was so shit scared to say anything to him. So yeah, my nickname was Statue for that first year.
Well, you had some pretty handy, I guess, Brumbies teammates to help you through that. Like those two names you mentioned, pretty stalwarts of Australian rugby in general, right?
Oh, they're awesome. And I think that the thing, especially the pre-game nerves before big games on tour, they'd always go to the movies the night before a big game. And I said, yeah, that was sort of a habit we got into early in my career. Yeah, all because of Sterlo and George. It's like, yeah, just get out of your hotel room. Let's go see a movie and then go home, go to bed. And because usually matches the next night are not till 7:30, 8 o'clock. So you got all day to sleep. So why not go see a movie, get your mind off the game? Though I do remember one time it backfired on George because we watched some movie. I can't remember what it was, but George was a dad, 4 kids at the time. And in the movie, the kid dies in it. It was pretty awful, actually, movie. But it was, we got back to the hotel and George goes, God, that's depressing. I need to go see another movie. And I think he went back out, went to watch another one, trying to scrub that movie from his memory. So, but yeah, no, they were legends. Really lucky to, guys I watched a lot as a kid, and to get to call them teammates and friends, and yeah, always love catching up with them when we bump into each other at functions. Yeah, they're legends.
I like that. Movies before game day. I feel like maybe some of our listeners, and maybe even I'll try like movie before race day. It feels like it could be a good way
now
to
we don't
clear
go
the
out
mind
to
and
Netflix.
relax.
Yeah,
We
watch movies on the telly. You go Netflix or whatever. But this was back in late 2000s, before Netflix, so you did need to go out to see a movie. So showing my age.
I still kind of like
my age. What it's.
You are. Speaking of that, actually, like, so this amazing moment where you get selected for the Wallabies, when did it start to become the dream for you, the goal? Like, at what age were you like, I want to be a Wallaby?
It never was.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I moved around heaps as a kid. We were born in Sydney, but moved to Melbourne. So the first sport I really remember watching was basketball and AFL, but then we moved to the US. And that was like during the 90s, so Michael Jordan and his peaks. I loved basketball. And then we moved back to Australia mid-90s, and the Wallabies had won the 91 World Cup, and and the Wallabies they were a good team. Oh, yeah, then they won the 99 World Cup. So that's when I and some family friends convinced my parents to let me and my brothers start playing. Well, yeah, signed with three boys and a sister, but me and my brothers all signed up, started playing rugby, and yeah, we were really lucky that it was an era, as we talked about the Matildas, the Australian rugby team in the 90s and early 2000s were the best team in the world. And yeah, that really inspired me and got me to love playing rugby. And a lot of the Wallabies players back then, the best players, Larkham, Gregan, and Sterlo, George Smith, they were all Brumbies players. So I loved watching the Brumbies as well. Even though I lived in Sydney, I was a Brumbies fan. And yeah, it was never a dream to play for the Wallabies because I never thought it was possible. I just kept playing rugby every year because I loved it. Finished school, moved down to Canberra, just kept playing for local rugby club. And it just happened. Like it was never a goal. The first goal I ever put was at the start of that my first Brumbies season. After I'd gotten my first contract, I was like, all right, now if I can get one game off the bench, make my debut, that'll be a good year. So yeah, it was never a goal to play for Australia ever. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
That's fascinating. I feel like there's probably not that many people that just kind of stumble into it. Even New Zealand were obviously rugby mad, and any kid who played rugby and thought they were all right, like the dream is always the All Blacks. But to stumble in and end up being a Wallaby and the Wallaby that you were is a pretty cool story. So you make the Wallabies. The next year for the Brumbies, you get a few more starts than your first year. They're like, oh, maybe this guy's quite good. But 2010, tell me what happened in 2010, because I think you might have been the number one try scorer for the Brumbies that year. How the hell did that happen as a prop?
We were dubbed the Real Madrid of Australian rugby. So like back in the 2000s, I think they were like Real Madrid had signed Beckham and Ronaldo, and I think they were like the first sporting team to have player salaries worth $1 billion Aussie or something. It was some crazy number. And we signed Matt Giddo, being a Brumbie, but he'd come back from Perth, Rocky Elsom, who was the Wallaby captain, and we had probably 2/3 of the Wallaby team in 2010. So we were dubbed Real Madrid, best team on paper. And I guess when teams were doing their homework or preparation to play us, they were too busy. They were thinking about marking all those guys. And it just left some few gaps around the ruck. And I'd played a lot of basketball, so I never felt worried about having the ball in hand. I loved having the ball in hand, passing, running with the ball. So yeah, sniffed out a few tries. So
I love it.
That's my best guess, that the opposition were worried about all the big names and left some space for me.
No one was looking at the prop being like, yeah, this guy's going to be the one that we've got to watch for scoring tries. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, maybe were you the start then of big mobile, good ball skills props? It's kind of bread and butter now, right? The expectation of a modern day prop is pretty insane in terms of ball skills and all that kind of stuff. Probably wasn't the same in 2010, right? You must have been the start of that.
I'd like to claim that I was.
I think we're gonna officially claim it on this podcast today.
I think, especially now, defenses are so good that you need all 15 players to be able to catch, pass, run, to really test defenses and find gaps. If you've only got 8 or 9 people that can do it, and for 5 or 6 guys they can't, then it's just going to be a lot easier for teams to defend you. So it really is. And maybe Australia always has tried to sort of lead the way in how the game is played. And Australia was Deansy was trying to get us to play expansively. The Brumbies always played expansive rugby, which is what I really loved and what caught my eye. And the fact it was expansive and winning rugby for a while. Maybe I just sort of got lucky and had ridden a bit of a trend where teams Australian rugby was definitely trying to play more expansively than my sort of skill set fitted nicely with. So yeah, a bit of luck. Definitely would say a bit of luck, but there's still space in the game for traditional props, especially in Europe, that they just lock down the scrum and then they just walk to the next scrum. And they're some of the best paid players, especially in the French league. Those just bigger the better. You get those big 150 kilo props. They can squat the house down. They can't run, but they still do a really important job in the game. And I think that's why rugby is the best game. There really is a sport for people of all different shapes, sizes, skills, abilities. It's really such a great metaphor for that and for teamwork and how people of different skills and abilities come together and produce performance. I just think it's a really great metaphor for that.
It really is. You went on to play 154 games for the Brumbies, which is a record for the club. Like, that's pretty phenomenal in any sport, let alone one where your body is getting just destroyed week in, week out. Like, do you have a secret to the longevity of being able to do something like that? We obviously see someone like James Slipper, who I assume isn't human, given he's still doing what he's doing. But how did you do that?
Yeah, I used to scratch my head with Slips, how he's still playing at the level that he's playing. Like, he's not just making up numbers. He's still playing really, really good footy. So much credit to him. A lot of it is, I love Canberra, so I didn't move a lot. So that kind of helps, to play. Slips is saying he's coming up on 200 games, but he played, the first half of his career at Queensland. So he's played a lot more games than I have. The thing, I never really wanted to go anywhere, so I just stayed in I loved the Brumbies, loved Canberra, married a Canberra girl that opened up a pub here. So I was really settled in Canberra. Had been a childhood dream, loved the club and to be playing for them, just there was nowhere else in the world I wanted to play. And it was basically also just looking after my body, like really had learned probably halfway through my career, we had a trainer, a guy by the name of Dean Benton, who really showed me what it was like or what it took to be really professional, especially around prioritizing nutrition and sleep and mobility over just training hard. Because early in my career, it was just all about rocking up to training and digging deep and pushing hard. And there was a slight recovery on emphasis on recovery and stuff. But under Dean, it was more about the nutrition, the sleep, recovery, doing the things away from training that enabled you to perform when the time came to train. And then if you trained well, you'd play well. And so I was, really, especially the second half of my career, really focused more so on nutrition and sleep than training. And I think that gave me the energy to keep training hard, and combine that with the love of the club in Canberra was kind of why, I sort of stuck around.
I hope that like every runner listening to this podcast took that on board, that the sleep and the nutrition were more important than the training, because you've nailed it. So hopefully they take that on board there. 72 caps for the Wallabies as well, which I think was a record or a joint record maybe for props, until the aforementioned James Slipper continued to keep doing. I think it's like 140 tests now.
Yeah, I think he's getting close to Saruch and Adam Whitelock, I think. He'll get
insane. Like,
sorry, Sam Whitelock. Sorry, not
Sam.
Yeah, those two, the durability of those two is just phenomenal. But Slips is someone, right up there. They're just, especially all the mid-career turmoil Slips had, that's very public. How he's come to Canberra and just grown as a human is just such an inspiring story. But
in your 72 tests, is there a moment that stands out above all as kind of the most important moment, the most interesting moment, the most exciting moment for you as a Wallaby?
There's a couple of wins that really stand out. One was beating 2012, beating England at Twickenham after we got flogged by France the week before. And we had a really rough year. We had a ton of injuries, and then we just came out on the field. All the British press they love putting the boot in and just riding you off. So we and to stick it to them in a really hard fought game, smashed it at the scrum. That was really satisfying, especially someone who has a British passport as well. So a lot of British ancestry and a lot of friends over there. That was really satisfying. Beating South Africa at the World Cup in 2011 in the quarterfinal somehow. That was a really satisfying win. Lost to your boys the next week in the semi, convincingly, but that quarterfinal, knocking out the world champs at the time in just an incredible game. That really stands out. But definitely the moment that stands out was getting sent off and losing to the Lions in 2013, the British and Irish Lions, who are coming out. Can't believe they're here next month or later this
12
month.
12 years.
12 years. Yeah, can't believe that, because I'd watched that 2001 series, which is when Australian rugby was absolutely at its peak. We'd won the 91 World Cup, 99 World Cup. We're beating the Kiwis regularly in the Bledisloe. And so it was the Lions was the next big thing to try and win. And we lost the first match in Brisbane. We'd won the second, and then we beat them just in the decider in Sydney. And I remember watching that as a kid. I don't think I was actually in New Zealand on a school rugby tour, especially for the second two tests, or definitely for that last test. And I just remember watching every minute of it going, wow, what a series. That's incredible. And then, 12 years later, be starting for the Wallabies in that series. I got to lead Australia out in the second test in Melbourne because that was my 50th test. So, again, we just lost the first test and we just won the second on the bell. So, we're going to Sydney, series decided, 12 years, like history repeating itself. And, I had it all planned out. All my friends, family were at the game and had it all planned out. I was going to propose to my girlfriend after the game on the sideline or at the Opera House after, which is where the after-match function was going to be. So had that all going to beat the Lions, going to propose to my wife. It's going to be amazing. And 15 minutes in the game, we were getting smashed at the scrum, and I got yellow carded, sent off, and we ended up getting flogged, which was a really, it was a really, really sad ending or disappointing ending to what was such a close series, those first two games, and to get blown out in the third. We just didn't handle the pressure. Looking back, we did not handle the pressure. We just run out of emotional energy. Like there was so much pressure, scrutiny, media attention, almost more than the World Cup. Like a Lions series is crazy. It's really hard to comprehend it to people who don't follow rugby, how big a Lions tour is, especially when you're hosting it because you only get a chance once every 12 years. So my nervous system really struggled to process that night, like the excitement and the pride. Like I remember running out, closing my eyes, singing the national anthem, and closed my eyes, and I could see the outline of Australia. And I remember being on the bus heading out to Homebush, and the sun was setting, and all of Australia's watching this, and it was just such a proud moment. To then, 20 minutes in the game, sent off, we get blown off the paddock, and just feeling like I'd let my whole country down, and just felt humiliated. That was a real, a moment that I'm really great. I struggled to deal with and hated it at the time, but a moment I've been really grateful to go through because it's taught me, that moment's taught me more than anything in my life. And I think back to it, a lot of why I struggled. I didn't talk to anyone after the game. And I remember bawling my eyes out on the team bus the next day, heading to the airport to fly back to Canberra. And I drunk myself into oblivion after the game. Most of us did. But I remember bawling my eyes out on the bus, and one of the boys thought what's wrong, Benny? Is your dog died or something? I go, no, like, fuck, we've lost a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, fuck. So I was shattered and humiliated. But I think and I never really enjoyed my international rugby again after that. And I look back now and I know, and it's, I'd let my whole identity become Ben the footballer. And that was never the case as a kid. I just played because I loved it. There was never any of these goals, and it was never to be a job. I just played because I loved it. I loved hanging out with my teammates. I loved the challenge that rugby is and how so many different parts of the game. There's the scrum, the line out, the maul, attack, defense. It's a really diverse, interesting game to play. Looks like a bit of a mess when you're watching it sometimes, but playing it is so much fun. And I lost. Leading up to it, just becomes so serious, all about work, all the pressure. And, I was getting paid really well, so it had become a job. And like I said the year before, or a few years earlier, getting all these tries and getting all this praise. And, I'd let it become Ben the person is Ben the rugby player. And if I played great, I felt amazing about myself. But if I didn't, I'd feel terrible and I'd beat myself up real bad. And looking back, the whole team, I didn't play great, but the whole team played terrible. Will Gagnon dropped it off the kickoff and then they score straight away. Like the whole team played terrible. And I don't know, I just copped a lot of the brunt of criticism online, but that was, again, I don't know why I read I read all that stuff because I cared. I wanted to make the fans proud. I just let my whole identity become Ben the footballer. And that made me a really mentally fragile person, overcoming obstacles and setbacks. I just, wasted so much time stewing over that. And sadly later, still proposed to my wife a few days later. We got married at the end. That was in July. Got married at the end of the year. And I still remember in the morning before my wedding day stewing about that loss. Still had amazing wedding day, still amazing day, like happily married, best day of my life. Got 3 great kids now, beautiful family. But not talking about how I was feeling after that game was still stewing on it until probably only 3 or 4 years ago. Stewed about it at least every week. It would just enter my thought pattern, and that I'd be remembered as being this loser that got sent off in such a big game. So, which is ridiculous, which is totally ridiculous. I just was so trapped and so caught up in my own head and own thoughts, and yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Do you think it was an inevitable place to find yourself? You know, you were someone who went into the game just loving rugby, so there was no pressure. Like once you got into the Wallabies, it was like, this is amazing, right? It wasn't like a pressure off your shoulders because it's what you'd always wanted to do. So you just played because you loved it. But then, you know, you did a good job and you had some good seasons and played in the World Cup and played in the Lions tour. Like, did all of that just slowly become a point where, all right, I went from something that I loved to now the pressure is here, and that was going to happen regardless of what you did? Like, is that a experience that you think is shared with other teammates?
Essentially, I just think I reached my inability to get over that loss and over tough losses really curbed my progress as a player. So I naturally just, because I kept loving it, I just kept getting better and better and better as a player. And then you get right to the big ranks and you're matching it with the best in the world. And you're not going to win every time, and you're going to have rough days at the office. But what helps blokes and players really then reach the peak is their ability to get over those. And because I just, could become all consumed, rugby became everything in terms of my identity and where I drew my self-esteem from. I just hyper-focused on it and never thought about anything else. It was rugby, 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 every waking moment. I struggled to ever switch off, even on days off. I was stewing, and that stuff's not healthy. And and the reason why I say it's such a great lesson to later life is you see people do it with work. They think about every waking moment, and they just burn themselves out, and they focusing and stressing about work. It'll get you to a point, but then you'll eventually plateau out, and then you'll eventually burn out. Whereas learning to know when to have breaks and rest and get away from the work or footy, I think that helps you take it to the next level and reach your full potential. And I look back and George and Sterlo were great examples of it. They'd take their days off. George Smith especially, we used to joke he'd really take time off, and he wasn't thinking about footy all the time. All the guys I look back that play, the great players, they were really good at getting away from the game and switching off. And that was probably the skill I lacked. That I had a great career, but if I'd wanted to have an even better one, that's at least what that lesson taught me, and that's something that match taught me, and why I'm really grateful for it, because I don't think most people have that lesson or that moment in their life until their sort of midlife crisis in their late 30s, 40s, maybe 50s, when they've just flogged themselves at work, and then they start realizing they wrap their whole identity and self-worth in their work, and they neglect other parts of their life, family, relationships, the health. And I'm just really lucky that I went through that lesson early in life.
What was the moment that made you decide to hang up your boots?
There was three things. I knew retirement was on the cards. I knew it was a year, maybe a year away at most. I retired 1 year earlier than I sort of had kind of planned to, but I knew what I wanted to do, so I felt like, yep, I know what I'm going to do next, and so that was sorted. My grandmother was diagnosed with terminal cancer and told me, Ben, it's time to quit with your rugby. You've had a great career. Don't get greedy. Keep playing too long and have an injury that you got to carry. My body's still in one piece. Don't get greedy and keep trying to eke out a few more years and pick up an injury you got to live with the rest of your life. Because I've got a few mates. One I played with, Rob Horn, who his arm is basically has a dead arm from an injury from a tackle. Had another mate have to retire because Pat McCabe broke his T1 vertebra 3 times, like the one or C1 or whatever the top vertebra is, cracked that 3 times. So he had to retire. So had a few friends have some really, really serious injuries, and I was like, nah, grandma's right. Now, it's hard to argue with your grandma, especially when, she's
Yeah.
seeing life very clearly because she's about to kick the
Yeah.
bucket, and she was giving advice to everyone. My dad, telling him to look after his health, and she told her sister to get off the booze. So she was giving out her last advice before she moved on. So there was that. That all happened. So grandma told me that, and then the next week had a chat with the Brumbies coach. I hadn't played well my last season. I had my third kid. I was tired, and I just wasn't. I wasn't really performing. And we had a really good, honest conversation. And he's like, "Mate, you're just not performing to the standard we need you. It might be time for you to move on." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I won't go play overseas. I think it's just time to just hang them up." And that was it. So it was those three things. It was getting the nudge from the Brums that my time I'd had a great run. My time was up. Knowing, feeling confident what I knew what I wanted to do, and having that message from my grandmother. Those three things sort of all happened. And then the next day I retired.
Just like that.
Yeah.
What did that feel like? What did that first day waking up no longer being the footballer?
Yeah, not great. And it wasn't that. It's such a big, athletes are creatures of routine, and it's such a massive shock to the system to now you're in charge of your top, like the cognitive effort that goes into figuring out what to do today, because you've lived such a structured existence for 12 or 13 years. I was really lucky, especially Bill Young was a coach of mine, ex-Wallaby, Brumby, and he'd always told me, "Ben, if you get 10 years out of your professional career, that is just like, geez, you're lucky." And so I'd got to 11. I'd played a few seasons, one season in England, and had sort of half a season in the Brums Academy, like as semi-professional. Yeah, that's how long I'd had having my routine for me. And all my routine was around helping me feel physically and mentally great to go out and perform. We had a chef for a few years at the Brums. They'd try and sort our sleep schedules. Yeah, it was the most amazing job to be paid to exercise with my friends every day. So that retired, I think, on the Monday or the Tuesday, and I was not feeling great at all. I hadn't gotten over dealt with the struggles from that Lions game about 5 years earlier. And a couple of years after that, a teammate actually committed suicide, a guy by the name of Dan Vickerman, who I'd played the 2011 World Cup with. And Vix and I had the same injury, whereas I'd snapped my leg in half sort of 10 years earlier playing, and had a metal pole put in my leg. And I ended up full recovery, got the pole out. It was before I sort of made my debut. So I'd made a full recovery, but Vix had done it just before the 2011 World Cup. And so, at that World Cup, we really bonded. Every day, he'd ask me questions about my leg and the injury and the recovery. And he retired the year after that World Cup. And I saw him, there's maybe 3 years later, I saw him a month before he died at the dock, and he'd blown out. He looked terrible. Yeah, he took his own life, despite being a brilliant guy. Had studied at Cambridge, Sydney University, had plenty of great job opportunities, wife, kids. So that was a real kick up the backside for me to try and get on top of my mental health. And I'd spend the days off on YouTube trying to understand how the brain worked, to try to understand why am I feeling the way I'm feeling. Because ever since that Lions game, I was feeling terrible from a nervous system perspective, but never spoke to it about anyone, never opened up. And so, having done a lot of that research on YouTube, I felt ready to retire, because there was a point where I was like, once Vix died, well, shit, Ben, you got to get on top of this, because you're already feeling like crap and you're still playing. What are you going to be like when you retire? So I did the research and felt confident to retire, but the next day felt fucking awful, to be honest. Just so brain fog, mind racing, but just so flat, struggling to get out of bed. And I was really lucky that a mate had texted me, go, "Mate," a day or two after I retired, he goes, "Mate, do you want to come to Parkrun?" And I go, "Parkrun? Mate, this is the last thing I feel like running. Last thing I feel like doing, mate. I've just been getting flogged my whole career. No, I don't feel like coming." And I don't know if he knew I was struggling, but, it's pretty common knowledge that athletes have a really tough transition. And he texted me, said, "Mate, come on, we'll go grab coffee after." I said, "All right, let's go do it." So we go, this is 2018. And we went to Burley Griffin Parkrun with another one of my best mates. And we did the Parkrun. I sprinted the start and then pretty much walk. It's an out and back, and I had to walk most of the way back. Then we went for the coffee, and I go, "Oh, I feel I feel like old Ben again. Now, an hour earlier, I was feeling fucking awful, mate. Like, not good at all. And I thought, oh, this is great. And I had the coffee and I go to the lads, I go, boys, can we do this again next week? And they're like, yeah, no worries. We'll do this course again. And anyway, so yeah, 50 weeks after I retired, ran my 50th park run and still do park run to this day. So I was wondering when we are going to start talking about running, but that, yeah.
You did it for us. Yeah.
It really, I don't know if it's fate or whatever. My running career started within a week of retiring.
Yeah, I'd love to ask the question about kind of what running meant to you when you're a Wallaby, right? You know, as an elite athlete, you're still running to some extent. Maybe props aren't known as the best runners on the park, but it's still part of it. So what was running like for you as a rugby player? And then what did it become once you'd retired?
It was two things as a rugby player. One, it was punishment for eating too much and being a fat club. And two, it was work, doing the work so you could go out and perform. So it was punishment and work. That's what I associated running with. I was pretty good at it, but I didn't have a great association with it. And then even with that park run, for the first, I don't know, it was all about performing, like eat. And then so after that first park run, I was like, all right, I did a couple of training runs during the week. So the next Saturday I ran like 25 flat, my first one. And then the next week I ran like 24:10 or something, not like 50 seconds off. And I was feeling really crap and pretty low about myself. But the one, I was like, oh, 50 seconds off my Parkrun PB here, I'm feeling pretty good. And so I got sort of hooked on that for the first 50 weeks. And then on my 50th park run, so yeah, I'd start running a couple times during the week as training runs to then try and run a really quick 5K on the weekend. And then that just gave me such great structure. That gave me the structure I was craving. Okay, run Tuesday, I do a hard run Tuesday, another one Thursday, I might stretch Friday, park run Saturday. Like, it gave me that structure that my brain needed. And then in my 50th park run, I ran 18:46. So for 5K. Oh. No, I haven't got anywhere near that since. But what was your question again? I've totally forgotten now.
I was just kind of getting like what running meant to you as a rugby player, and then afterwards, yeah.
Yeah, so it was, as a rugby player, it was punishment and work. Whereas through that process, once after I ran that 50th park run and ran my PB, I nearly shit my pants, ran so hard. I even shed a tear or two in that back kilometre. I pushed myself as hard as I've ever pushed, more than any game. Like, I really dug deep and went balls to the wall for that 50th. And I remember in the weeks after that thinking, oh man, I'm never going to beat that time. And nor do I want to. I pushed myself so hard. And from then on, running it just became a social thing. Like, I'm totally okay with not running fast. And looking back, I think a lot about the improvement in my times and how that sort of made me feel good. Now probably considered a fast runner. It was catching up with my friends every week and going having coffee. That's what I associate running with now is just doing some exercise, get your endorphins, get your heart rate up, because then that'll put you in a great state to catch up with your friends after. And I've never had a bad conversation ever with anyone after a run. It is always the best conversations. It just going there and helps you get out of your head, just gets those endorphins, and no one complains or whinges about their partners or whatever. Everyone's just positive. And so I did the running for the catch up after, because I just know everyone's just in a great state, great mood to chat, connect. So no, running now is it's 100% enjoyment and social connection.
Yeah, I love it. I do want to touch on that 5K time though, because that's bloody impressive. Like 18:45, is that what you said?
Yeah, 46 or 48 or something. Yeah.
Is like, because you also would have been still a pretty big guy, right? Like a year out of retiring as a international prop. I can't imagine.
I think I retired about 118, 120, and a year later I was down about 105, 106. So that massively helped. But yeah, Brumbies taught us. One of our trainers, Ben Sapel, who's now the head trainer of Richmond, had really drilled into a good running technique and how that, can injury. So I remember at the time we'd be doing these running drills and we're like, oh, this is boring snake. Come, mate, can we just play touch footy or something? And he'd make us do these drills, holding up a broom, high knees, getting our feet hitting the ground right. And I remember at the time just thinking, this is such a joke. Because it wasn't hard, but it was just, but looking back, I'm so glad we did all that work because, I've got a reasonably good running technique now and have had very little injuries. And that's, I guess, why I'm still able to keep running because I think I've got a pretty good, I'm no Kipchoge, but I've got reasonable running technique even for a big guy. But I guess a big guy is even more important because if you don't have good running technique, you'll your chances of injury are just much higher because you just carry much extra weight.
Yeah, I think Kipchoge probably weighs half of that, so
yeah,
he doesn't have too much to move around. You brought it up a little bit earlier, but it's probably become a reasonable part of your life, and it sounds like quite an exciting part. But tell me a bit more about the dock.
Yeah, so it's pub, Kingston Foreshore. We opened December 2014, so it's 10 years old now. When I was living on campus as a uni student, I went to the local pub, the Lighthouse, so much that I got to know the family that owned it. Oh, that's how much of a piss uni student I was. And so family owned it, and there's a brother and a sister, and they were looking to start a new sports bar in another part of Canberra, the Kingston Foreshore. It was still getting developed, but they had this idea and they thought, well, let's see if we can get a sports person involved. And I'd stayed in touch with them and just Facebook and stuff. The shooter had come to my Bucks buddy. So we were still in touch. And then shooter got a text saying, hey, mate, do you want to catch up about a business idea? I was like, oh, yeah, okay. And they said, we've got this idea for a sports bar. Would you like to get involved? And yeah, that was 11 years ago now. And we've had some really rough times. Like, we were in gangbusters when we first opened. And then as anyone who works in hospitality knows how fucking awful the pandemic and the lockdowns were. We weren't sure we'd survive through that. But yeah, proud to say the last year we've had is the best year we've ever had. And it's going as good as ever. So yeah, we love it. We take our kids there all the time. We try and just create a really relaxed atmosphere the kind of place, I want to drink at. I love it. It's like my clubhouse now.
It sounds almost like as a uni student, you probably had bigger dreams of maybe owning a pub one day than playing for the Wallabies.
Well, no, and okay, so I never dreamed in a million years I'd own a pub. Never.
Yeah.
I loved going to pubs, loved getting on the piss, but it was, again, back to it was never a dream. I just never thought it was possible. Like, the concept of owning a business. My mum's a doctor, dad's a nurse. One grandfather's an accountant. My other grandfather was a CSIRO scientist. So there was no business genetics business just wasn't, I was never taught anything about business, didn't know anything about it. It was always, family were big on academics and studying and then you go get a job. So yeah, man, love the place and really proud of it.
What were you going to do post rugby if it weren't for the dock? Had you even thought about that?
Well, I was lucky. The dock started probably 4 years before I retired. So I had a couple, and it was never designed for me to work. Shooter and Jane, they're full time. They run it. I used to just blow in, blow out, bring some positive energy, some new ideas every now and then. Try the menu out. We got a new, it's a spicy halloumi kale bowl. So if anyone's down there's just joined the menu. Just had that for lunch today, so that was good. Little plug for Pony the chef. Yeah, so I had no idea while I was playing because I was just so focused on footy, and then the dock opportunity just popped up and gave that a crack, and that went really well. So it was only towards the back end of my career. When Dean, that trainer that got me to really focus on nutrition and sleep, he made me keep a food diary. As he's like, Benny, you are not connecting the dots between what you're eating and how you're performing. Keep a food diary. And I remember just writing down what I would eat, and I just naturally started eating better because I was being mindful. Wasn't even looking at the calories, just writing it down. Anyway, so I had the year before I retired, we'd had kids, and I took 6 months off, took long service leave, and would sign shorter contracts. So I wasn't getting picked for Australia, so I'd take 6 months off, just play the Brumbies year. And so I had kind of like a trial retirement at the time, had young kids and had some time to think about what I would do. And I knew, I'm really enjoying business with the doc. And I don't know how I had the idea, but I was like, I was really loving food tracking. It helped me get out of Brumbies Fat Club. And I was using my fitness pal, and all my friends and family were like, "Oh, Ben, geez, you're in good shape." I said, "Yeah, I just track what I eat. It's my fitness pal," and all my friends would download it, but they just all found it too much work. So I had to, shoot on it for about 6 months, thinking, how could you make it easier? Anyway, I had an idea for create an easy food tracking app. We had been working on it with a relative while I was playing. It built like a really crappy prototype, retired to then go like double down on it, and then got told, "Oh, we've got to rebuild it." And that was a whole nother chapter. Many fails, bumps in the road, a lot of mistakes. And then so I had worked on probably the first 4 or 5 years of retiring. I put it to bed a year and a half ago, working on that. So that's what I retired to do. And then, the pandemic happened. And so that smashed the pub. And so I was in a really bad way. But I thought I'd do a tech startup. That's what I thought I'd do alongside the pub.
Yeah, okay. And did that end up going anywhere?
Oh, we got a few $1,000 in revenue and had some customers. I think we got to like 180 customers at max. But this is before AI, so people would take a photo or send text of their food, and we have nutrition students in the Uni of Canberra estimating the calories for people. So we were doing it all manually and trying to get people to not think about tracking food for weight loss, but more for energy management and have more energy and to feel good. Yeah, one day I might give it another crack, especially as AI is just getting better and better and better. But I'm pretty comfortable knowing I did it solo, so had a friend help, but was solo, and that was a massive grind doing that solo. So got a product in the app store, got people using, paying for it, some happy customers, but I couldn't get it to scale.
It's a tricky thing to do, right? Like most startups fail, but you gave it a crack and you might do it again at some point. I want to talk about the thing that you've got on your jersey there, running for resilience. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So after I ran back to the Parkrun stuff, when I really got into it after retiring, ran my 50th Parkrun and wrote a thank you blog to Parkrun, just saying, "Hey, thank you so much. This really helped me, gave me structure, helped keep me active during that really tough patch not just keep me active, also helped me reconnect with my uni friends and make new friends during a really tough patch in my life with retiring and my grandma dying and trying to get my next career happening." And so, a really nice, genuine blog. Canberra Times reshared it, and a young Brumbies fan saw it. A guy by the name of Matt Breen, who I didn't know Breeny, but he was a big Brumbies fan. And he saw it, and he really resonated with the article around the theme of exercising with friends when times are tough. And he had lost his dad to suicide 10 years earlier, and his mum was dying of cancer. She'd just been diagnosed. And so he was going through a really rough patch himself and wanted to do a one-off run for mental health. And so he saw the article and he goes, "Oh yeah, I'll email Benny." He knew Benny A owns the doc. So he emails the doc saying, "Hey, can we host a one-off run?" And this was in December 2019. I said, "No worries, we'll do, we'll host, shout everyone beer and pizza." And so the next week we had the first running for resilience. About 20 people came. Shooter and I, the other owner, and our manager Jackson, we all ran it with him. But we did the run and we came back and we're having the beer, and I go to Brandy, I go, "Mate, this is good fun. Let's do it again next week." And then we're all right, mate, running for resilience on again next week. And next week about 25 people came. Anyway, fast forward 5.5 years, we haven't stopped, and we're now getting sort of over 1,200 people a week to our events. We get up to 500 to 600 now on Wednesday nights at the pub when the weather's good. Numbers have dropped off over winter, but we had
a lot of beer and pizza.
Well, so we got to about 40 or 50 people in, and then I remember Shooter and I feeling really a bit sheepish, and we had to go up to Brandy. He goes, "Sorry, mate, we can't keep shouting all these people pizzas, but we'll keep shouting the beers." And he said, "Mate, no worries, of course." I was super grateful. And then it got to about 150 people, and we're like, "Shit, that's a lot of beer we're going to shout each week. We need to find a beer sponsor." And lucky the doc has done some stuff with Traveller, which is Travis Fimmel, the Aussie actor, Ragnar from Vikings. We've done some stuff with him, and so he and his team were really grateful. Now sponsor it, so they cover all the beers. So the free beer still continues, thanks to Traveller. And a year ago, or the start of last year, this lady, Jess Peel, super nice. She'd been running with us for a while, but then she started bringing her husband. And he turned out to be the owner of Anytime Fitness in Australia.
Mm.
I didn't know him, but he just pulled Brainy and I aside, introduced himself and said, "Hey guys, do you want to like scale this and try and help more people love what you're doing here on Wednesday night?" And we're like, "Oh, okay, hadn't thought about it, but all right." And he made a really generous donation, and so we formalised as a charity because the year earlier we'd set a goal of a suicide-free Canberra by 2033. Brainy had started it because he wanted to create something that would have helped his dad in his dad's darkest moment. He wanted to save one life. And about a year after it started, 3 or 4 months after it started, we went into that first pandemic or lockdowns, and we thought, oh, that's the end of Running for Resilience. That was nice. You know, it got to 40, 50 people during the bushfires, and it was building nicely. But then the pandemic sort of, we had to stop doing it. We thought that was nice. But as soon as the lockdown stopped and the pub reopened, it just kicked back off. And then about a year after it started, we started getting letters from people and messages saying that it helped save their life. That a lot of people come to Canberra for work and they don't know people and they're very socially isolated. Canberra can be quite a lonely place if you don't know anyone. And yeah, we just started getting more and more of these messages. People just, these unbelievable messages. And we're having a chat one day and we thought, you know, we don't think anyone's destined for suicide. Therefore, every suicide is, it's possible that every suicide is preventable. And let's have a crack at trying to make Canberra suicide free. So we announced that in 2023. And yeah, sort of a 10-year goal. So 2033, first time sort of ever set a 10-year goal. I'm really proud to say that the suicide rate in Canberra has dropped 44% since the pandemic. So that's according to ABS data. So Canberra was above the national average. It's now well below lowest per capita in Australia from being above in the pandemic. And that's not all Running for Resilience. I hope we're helping. I'm pretty confident we're not hurting, but it's just a great sign of progress in the territory that we're starting to make some progress on what's a really traditionally really tough, hard area to help people.
And I want to, like, that's amazing. And there's probably other things I want to ask on that, but you use the title of Chief Energy Officer. And I really like that concept, but where did this kind of concept around energy come from for you?
It started during food tracking. So like started to look at food as fuel, like it's your energy. And if you eat the right amount, if you don't eat enough, you don't have energy. And if you eat too much, you feel like crap and you don't really have energy. So like for me, it started looking at food as energy, it's fuel. But then, I don't know, just along that journey, I retired thinking if I eat well and sleep well, I'll have the energy to train. That's simple. And part of me when I retired and I got depressed at the end of the pandemic was just in a really, really, MBI was in a super bad way at the end of that pandemic. Been trying to grind away with Alfred, had made a ton of mistakes, sold my home to fund it, and the dock had been smashed by the pandemic. So I made a ton of mistakes. So I was in a really, really bad way. And what was most scary about that was I was still trying to eat well, sleep well, exercise, and I still got depressed. And that experience through my recovery learned that, you know, there's so much more to your energy than just what you eat, what you eat, how well you sleep, the importance of connection, boundaries with work, purpose, all these things contribute to how much energy you have and how you feel. And from being all up and down the spectrum of well-being, from feeling incredible, you know, playing for Australia and the highs of that, to being an absolute, you know, borderline suicidal, having suicidal thoughts, I've come to look at mental health as really just how much energy you have, and that, or what we call mental health struggles, is really just chronically low energy levels, chronically for a long period of time. And that people that are thriving in life just have naturally have really high, and they've got good energy. You know, it's like to be around someone who's got energy all the time. And that may sound oversimplistic, but I do believe it's true. But what isn't simple is there's just so much that goes into, so many factors that go into how much energy you have. So, and you feel it. And why I call myself Chief Energy Officer of Running for Resilience is like, you see people come on the Wednesday night, they might not be feeling good, but everyone just walks away buzzing, big smile on the face. Like you can feel the energy down there. That's how Australia used to struggle to go to bed Wednesday night. Fucking so much energy, feeling amazing. You see everyone around you grins on their face, having a great time. They've done something challenging, or they're having a water or a soft drink or a beer with their mates. Yeah, just become obsessed about energy. Because I personally believe everyone's overcomplicating well-being, mental health, and performance, and it really does come back to how much energy you have. Because it's 100% certain that in sport, it is the team with the most energy is the team that wins, and I think the same is true for business and life and family. It's just something I think about every day. Is my energy? Am I spending it wisely? Am I doing things that's going to set me up to have energy tomorrow? Am I doing work that's fulfilling, that's going to give me energy for the long haul, or am I just chasing sort of quick wins that might make me feel good in the present? So, yeah, I feel why R4R is working, as it's helping people who are feeling really crap, making them feel better. And I guess how I verbalize it is we're giving them energy.
I really love as you say, there is complexity that goes into it, but I love the simplicity of it at the same time, and not trying to overcomplicate well-being, as you said. And in fact, like your journey is almost a nice reflection of that. Like, it doesn't really sound like you were someone who really overcomplicated things. You did things that you enjoyed doing, and then things came from that, right? Like it's always more nuance involved, but you enjoyed playing rugby, you ended up playing for the Wallabies, right? You
Love drinking piss, so I got involved in a pub.
Open a bar. It's pretty simple, right? But I think it's a really nice thing for someone who you are a successful individual, how society might look at you in any way that you might want to look at it. But you're not the chest banging, like, these are all the things that blah, 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 that you do get out there. And it's quite nice to hear a story where it's like, I just did the things that I loved and things kind of worked out. There were struggles along the way, but that's how we got there. I think that's really, really refreshing to hear.
I'm like my dad at a young age. Don't listen to him much, but the one bit of advice that Dad gives me, that I remember at a very young age, him telling me, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And I loved the idea of not working. So I was always, just do things you love. I don't know. Yeah. I think that's one thing I'm good at, is if I find something I enjoy, I'm pretty good at figuring a way to stick with it. Rugby's been the only thing that probably enjoyed it too much, and have learned the perils of when something you love becomes a job, and then there's the pressure and expectations and stuff with that. But I feel going through all that Lions lessons really set me up, because I feel the same way about running for resilience and my other work and the doc. I feel the same way about all of them as I do playing rugby. You can just I verbalize it, but I can feel it in my nervous system that I love all that stuff. And this time, now that I get a second swing at a career, I've figured out I'm more cautious of, I'm a bit wiser about the perils of getting really good at something you love. And so, but just super grateful that I found it again through my work running for resilience and my pub and the talks that I do, that never in a million years did I plan those things. It's just happened.
Yeah, that's cool. And yeah, as you mentioned, you got a few things on the go, and you do, I guess, talks a little bit like this podcast, but in more, with businesses and whatnot. So what does kind of now look like for Ben, and what does the next few years kind of look like for you, do you think?
Yeah, so my daughters, twins are in year 3, other daughter's in year 2. So a lot of time with them. Wife, support Jen with her work. She works for the government. So at some point we may do like a posting or something down the track, but not at the moment. But for me, for me personally, it's, keep pursuing the goal of running for resilience. So keep trying to get suicide rates to 0. I don't work at the pub very much, but I do stick my head in there every week. So just still enjoy being at the pub, and then keep doing more talks, just trying to get clearer with my message, trying to help people believe that performance and well-being is simple, and it is just how much energy you have, and that if you prioritize the things that give you energy, that your well-being and your performance will take care of itself. So that's it.
Amazing. I love it. And we've touched on a few of these things, but I get 3 kind of key pieces of advice. So what I want from you is your number 1 top piece of advice for life, your number 1 piece of advice for leadership, and your number one piece of advice for running, of course.
Best piece of advice. I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't really have any.
I love that.
Things that
You've spent the last...
Prioritize your energy. Like, prioritize things to give you energy. I guess that's what my talks are all about. That's the advice I give. Yeah, prioritize nutrition, sleep, all that stuff. If you're a runner, that'll help you run better rather than just focusing on trying to push it as hard as you can. Pushing yourself hard is important, but you can't do it if you don't have the energy to do it. And you'll have the energy to do it if you're well rested, recovered, all that good stuff. What were the other two questions?
Life, leadership, and running. Pieces of advice for each.
Life. Oh, well, look after your energy. Keep your energy up. Look after your health. You've got nothing without that. Leadership. I think people do follow energy. Like, you do want it. I mean, who wants to follow a leader that's just tired and run down? I mean, no one wants to work for a tired idiot or work with a tired idiot. So don't be a tired idiot. Look after yourself, have energy, have bandwidth to help others, and they'll follow you. So I do think there's something subconscious. I can't explain the science behind it. Maybe it's just body language and that you can pick up on people's energy. It's same like when you go into a massive stadium before a big game and the hair sticks up in the back of your neck. You do feel that. Maybe that's just excitement, but there is some sort of wiring. I think that people look to leaders with that calm, confident energy. So something around that, leadership, and then so life, leadership, and running. Why are you running? If you're running to try and run a good time, it'd be what I said before: nutrition, sleep, mobility. That'll help you run fast rather than just trying to run fast. I know that's not what people do. Everyone gets the runner app and they like getting out there and pushing themselves hard to feel good about themselves, but that works too. But if you really want to run your best, it is doing all the other stuff to put you in a position, focusing on that so you then can push yourself hard. But but with running is, and that old saying, what is it? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think, with running, probably on life and everything, just find a great running community. Run with them. People think running is an individual sport, and I think it's the exact opposite. It is a team sport. I love seeing all those. There's a YouTube video, or maybe it was Insta Reels of Kipchoge doing his day where he lived in Africa, where he'd go out on this huge group run in the morning, and then they'd be at the gym, and then he'd sweep and clean up, and then they'd go for a big group run. And when he goes out in the marathon, he's on his own, but he's got his team, he's got his coach, he's got all his teammates. Find your team. And I guess I look back to my startup failure. It was because I was a team of one, but everything else that's going, running for resilience, the doc, my rugby, everything else that's going great in my life even though my talks I do on my own, I've got people I'm chatting with, bouncing ideas off, giving me feedback. Everything that's going great in my life is because I'm a part of a team and a community. So find that. If you really want to go good with your running, find your community, find your team.
It's very cool. Well, anybody who finds themselves in Canberra can go and get some free beer from Ben, turning up at the dock on a Wednesday night going running for resilience. How else can people kind of keep up with what you're doing and what Running for Resilience are doing? What's the best way to kind of follow along?
Just go runningforresilience.com. We're on Instagram, and then if you start follow me, just follow me on LinkedIn, or I've got a Substack. Just look for me, and it's just called Energy.
Amazing. It's genuinely been a really, really, maybe more interesting conversation than I expected. I don't really know what I expected. I expected it to be good, but I think I've learned a lot from you, which has been cool, and it's been a very enjoyable conversation for me. This is the reason I do it, right? Hopefully people listening enjoy it, but ultimately, as long as I get to have an interesting conversation with an interesting person, that's kind of job done. So thank you for being that interesting person and having some interesting things to talk about.
No, my pleasure, mate. And I hope you enjoyed the podcasting. Feel the same way about podcasting as I did about rugby and running and the pub. And if you do, I'm sure if you stick at it, mate, this will go really well, mate. So, as long as you enjoy it, keep going.
Amazing. Thank you.
Cheers, Chase.
And that is it for today's episode of Execs Who Run. Huge thanks to Ben Alexander for sharing his story so openly and reminding us that resilience is something we build one step at a time. If you enjoyed this conversation, please follow the show, leave a review, and importantly, share it with someone who you think might need to hear this. For more, head to execswhorun.com or find us on LinkedIn and Instagram at execswhorun. Thanks for listening, get out running, and we will see you next time.